They say wrestling is at its best when variety is fueling things forward. That's true. In fact, it's true with anything. If any type of show or event can pace itself well and keep you interested, then you're not going to tune out. And a good way to do this is by keeping that element of surprise alive. There have been plenty of times, however, when WWE has gone way over the line and left us in a position where we just feel uncomfortable. Again, that can be good TV, but it can also be beyond horrific and leave us scarred to our core. That is not cool. I'm Simon from WhatCulture, and this is 10 WWE moments that made you extremely uncomfortable.
But before we begin this piece of red-hot content, I want to talk to you about an absolute flamer of a game, an all-time classic mobile RPG, Alliance Heroes of the Spire. With real-time PvP, insanely giant boss battles, never-ending hero customization options, and massive guild battles all on your mobile, this is truly a rocket in your pocket. There's over 10,000 different hero combinations and challenging enemies to boot, so this is a game that will challenge you and make you work for your wins. So, what more do you need? Go to the description below, click the links, and not only will you get to play this absolute beast of a game, but I will personally give you 50,000 gold and 50 gems to get you started right, because I'm such a nice guy. You're welcome. Now back to the content.
Number 10. Brock Lesnar brutalises Zach Gowen. If WWE's plan here was to get Lesnar as much heel heat as possible, then they did a good job. After all, the narrative in place was massive man pushes one-legged cancer survivor down the stairs as he sits in his wheelchair. Just let that sit in for 1 second. Bit much, right? The weird thing was that Gowen was a trained pro wrestler, so all of this could have been done in the ring and still worked. But no, we had to go all in, meaning on the August 21st, 2003 episode of SmackDown, Brock beat him to a pulp during a match, destroyed him with some vicious chair shots, gave him a headbutt, and then 2 F5s into the ring post. Oh, and all this happened while Zach's mum was watching. Gowen was left bloodied with a storyline broken leg, and then 2 weeks later, Brock pounded on his injury before hurling him down said stairs. Now, this did work in the sense everyone was so shocked they despised Lesnar, and maybe it was this uncomfortable nature that keeps us talking about it today, but it's still tough to watch. Number 9, the MELANIE PILLMAN interview. This is tough no matter which way you look at it. From the moment Brian Pillman died on October 5th, 1997, just a few short hours before WWE had the Bad Blood pay-per-view, it was horrible event after horrible event. What else can it be when someone passes away, especially when Pillman was meant to wrestle Dude Love on the show? It's a situation you wouldn't wish on anybody. What to do after this was always going to be difficult, but putting MELANIE PILLMAN, Brian's wife, on Raw 24 hours later to do an interview is almost excruciating to watch. It's only fair to say that she did agree to do this, but seeing a clearly distraught MELANIE begging aspiring athletes to avoid drugs and fretting over how she would support her kids is just harrowing. No one needed to see this on a program that's designed to entertain, and to this day, it's tough to know who this was for or why it was done. WWE did support the Pillman family following Brian's untimely death, but still, no one really wanted to see this back then, and that remains true today. Number 8, WWE books 2 miscarriage angles. This is going to differ on the individual, I guess, but for me personally, there are some areas I like my wrestling to stay away from. Miscarriages is one of those. A topic that's just far too intense and distressing to start plonking in the middle of Monday Night Raw, WWE did go in this direction in January of 1999. Featuring Terry Runnels, who claimed to be pregnant with either Goldust or Val Venus' baby, it got off to a right start when Venus dumped her after hearing the news. From here, Runnels claimed to have suffered a miscarriage after D'Lo Brown accidentally knocked her off the apron. It was too close to reality to be enjoyed on any level, and it got even more shady when it turned out this was a setup. Terry had never been pregnant, which meant she had lied about something as horrendous as this. Once wasn't enough either, apparently, as in 2004 we did it again, this time with Kane falling on top of supposed mother-to-be Lita after he'd been blasted by a Gene Snitsky chair shot. In the weeks that followed, WWE filmed Lita and Kane at the hospital with a comatose-looking Lita simply lying in bed staring straight into the camera. Given that wrestling is meant to be an escape, this was just all a little too much and way too close to the bone. A miscarriage is a very real, painful thing and should not be used to further wrestling storylines. Because obviously. Number 7, Drunk Hawk. This is even worse in hindsight given what happened to Hawk, but even during the late 90s, trying to blur storyline with real life personal issues is uncomfortable. No one wants to see someone's issues exploited on live television, but when Hawk was given a more adult character to time with the Attitude Era, that did result in his struggles with drug and alcohol addiction. This hurts more when you learn it was against the wishes of both members of the Legion of Doom. That was ignored, and Hawk was shown wrestling under the influence and began demonstrating suicidal tendencies. The whole torrid angle culminated in an awful and very uncomfortable piece of WWE TV when he climbed the Titantron on Raw in order to kill himself. As his friends tried to talk him down, Droz seemingly pushed Hawk off the side of the giant screen, and we were all meant to think he had died and that Droz had done this to try and get a foot in with the legendary tag team. This is one of those times where the hottest period in wrestling absolutely lost its mind. Number 6, The Undertaker hangs the BOSSMAN. And it's from one would-be death to another. In a moment that you dread ever having to explain to a non-wrestling fan, WWE felt like it would be a good idea to actually hang one of their wrestlers from the neck by a rope. Happening at WrestleMania 15 when the Big Boss Man went ahead with The Undertaker, the final shot of the match was Ray Traylor swinging from the top of the Hell in a Cell with a noose around his neck. Of course, Boss Man wasn't actually hanged, it was a stunt, but it was a horrible thing to see, even more so because he was told to play dead. This is not what a young, impressionable mind wants to look at. And sure, you can argue if they do it in horror films, why not here? But the answer is mostly, it's expected in the former, and not the latter. It was also on nobody's, I want to watch that list, at all. It served no purpose and made even less sense when Bossman was fine later on. You must have taken a trick out of The Undertaker's, I came back to life playbook. Number 5, Eric Bischoff forces himself on Stephanie McMahon. You know, sometimes you see things, then your brain instantly forgets because it's just too much? Welcome to entry number 5 on this list. The title alone should be enough of an explanation, but hilariously, it gets worse. Why? Because when Bischoff did this, he was also dressed up as Vince McMahon, who of course is Stephanie's father. What on earth did anyone think if this was the first SmackDown they'd ever tuned into? But yes, on October 31st, 2002, Eric Bischoff, dressed as Vince, barged into Stephanie McMahon's office and planted a kiss on the billion-dollar princess. Steph tried to stop him, but he blocked that and went in with tongues aplenty. Apparently, this wasn't enough for all involved because although she initially resisted, Steph quickly reciprocated. Bischoff then left. It was an odd segment to say the least, especially because the announcers basically ignored it, and it led nowhere. Want the final nail in the coffin? It was all directed by the chairman of the board, meaning Vince McMahon was behind the camera pulling all the strings as his former greatest rival came on to his own daughter. What the f*** is wrestling, man? Seriously. Number 4, Randy Orton says Eddie Guerrero's in hell. What else do I need to say? I will, because that's the point of the video, but when Eddie Guerrero tragically passed away at the age of 38 on November 13th, 2005, WWE decided to scrap that night's storylines and stage 2's tribute shows in his honour. This was all done very well, even though it was incredibly tough to watch. From here, however, it became a case of WWE using it as storyline, and that's where it became almost impossible to keep viewing. It was bad enough when Guerrero's lowrider was used to wipe out The Undertaker, but Randy Orton took it to the next level when he told Rey Mysterio that Eddie was in hell. That's a line that would make most people go weak at the knees, but given Eddie's born-again Christianity and the importance he placed on his faith, well, I don't know. Doesn't seem cool to me. Then there was Mysterio, one of Guerrero's closest friends, who couldn't have been too happy about it either. Clearly, people within the company thought the same, as even Mick Foley on a blog he wrote for WWE.com said he felt this exploited his death and hoped it would all end soon. Number 3, Steve Austin beats up Michael Cole. Now, yeah, a lot of people probably think about beating up Michael Cole, but I don't think you'd actually do it. There's no need, and he's not a bad person, even if you aren't a fan of his commentary. Even within the world of pro wrestling, that may seem weird, given that watching Stone Cold open a can of whoop-ass on someone is fun. That's what he did for years. Back in 2001, though, it made for one of the most uncomfortable moments of the year. Steve Austin, in storyline, took offense to some comments Cole had made on commentary regarding his upcoming triple threat match with Chris Benoit and Chris Jericho at the King of the Ring. After giving him a verbal tongue whipping, Austin completely manhandled Cole before kicking the crap out of him and ripping the shirt right off his back. It was during a period where the Rattlesnake was desperate for heel heat, and this was a way to get it, just murdering an innocent man in the ring. But the manner in which it played out was just a little too much, and it slowly moved into uh-oh territory. Number 2, Tim White tries to kill himself. Right, I'm just gonna say it, I don't want to see suicide stuff in my pro wrestling. It's not fun in the real world or a make-believe one, but we're here now, so let's get on with it. After veteran referee Timmy White injured his shoulder taking a tumble at Hell in a Cell at Judgment Day 2002, he had to quit being a ref and eased into a backstage role. Armageddon 2005, WWE shot a series of segments with a despondent White at the pub he owns, called the Friendly Tap, claiming the accident had ruined his life. Throughout, White was shown as a depressed heavy drinker who was at the end of his tether. And that's because he was. He grabbed a shotgun and pulled the trigger off camera, and we were meant to think that someone was dead. But he wasn't dead, he had just shot his foot by accident. Amazingly, this skit turned into a regular WWE.com series called Lunchtime Suicide, with the former official trying a new way of offing himself and failing. I genuinely can't believe I've just said those words. Some people watching all of this actually thought it was legit too and phoned the police. In short, don't do this, please. Number 1, the Chris Benoit tribute show. Stands to reason this one, and it's a show I'd rather never talk about again. But when WWE received news that the Benoit family were all dead, initially it seemed as if they'd been taken in some horrible accident. Given nobody knew for sure, the decision was made to run a tribute show even though management didn't have all the facts. This had wrestler testimonials and clips of Benoit's most famous matches, and it was during the program when the shocking details of what had really happened began to emerge. As Raw ended, some news outlets were starting to report on a double murder-suicide, and instantly, this became the most uncomfortable experience in WWE history. You can say the company was in an impossible situation, but that doesn't make it any easier to swallow.
Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Aren't you a star? Don't forget to like, share and subscribe below, and also there's probably more content floating up above my head, so why not check that out as well? Could be a laugh. Probably. 6 out of 10.